many of us have been very concerned about who's coming across the border. It's been very open for a couple of years now. And we've been looking at the possibility that there are many people that could be even tied to terrorists that are coming from these countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan. And sure enough, we find out 2 days ago that these folks were, in fact, arrested on immigration charges, of course, but that's the basic charges. 8 folks, they were arrested in New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles. They were crossed the border in 2023. And then we find out that they are believed now by the FBI and others investigating this that they have ties to ISIS-K. So let's talk about that, because it's important, especially if you're in church security or you're concerned about your safety anywhere here in the United States, that this is something that you should focus on. And we want to talk about how these folks operate when they become violent and how it affects us in our communities and specifically in our churches. They're believed to have those ties to ISIS-K. FBI used a wiretap to monitor them. Now, you know that if they were wiretapping them, there was already some concern with that. To get the wiretap, forget the legal stuff, but to get the wiretap, you're talking about there's got to be a little bit of a reason for at least them to focus on them a bit, if you will. So, and they confirmed, I have unconfirmed reports that there was discussions about bombs going on between these individuals. And notice, by the way, they came across the border in 2023 is what the report says. And notice they didn't all go huddle up in a small apartment somewhere and get jobs and that kind of stuff. No, they split up across the country in major areas. In fact, what I understand is that one was arrested in Los Angeles and the majority were arrested in New York, and 1 or 2 were arrested in Philadelphia. So that's very interesting to me that that is the case. So because they're splitting up to major cities across the United States. Hey, I just want to jump in here for a moment and invite you to come over and join us at the Church Security Community. We're over there having great conversations about different issues in church security. We are able to share information. You can also jump into live chats. You get office hours with me to ask questions. We've also got the once a month intel report that gives you a church security climate, as well as other times where you can interact. You can also jump into discussions. Post your questions anytime so that other people in the community are able to answer your questions or interact, and we can learn all kinds of things. There's also free training. If you join at the all access level, there's free 20-minute, 10-minute little trainings where you get a handout and a certificate. You can share those trainings with your teams as well. Make some great briefing trainings. If you join at the pro level, there's some full trainings, 8-hour, 12-hour type trainings that are there available to you, as well as you get a handout and a certificate with all of our training, so you can put that kind of stuff in files. So come over there and join us. Join up with the rest of us, and let's talk about church security. Just go to churchsecurityanswerman.com/community. And I look forward to seeing you over there. And so then when we look at ISIS, and this is what I want to dig into, because it's not just about the politics or the report or even the danger about these hidden people hanging out, these secretive situations where thousands and maybe even millions of these people, at least hundreds of thousands of folks, have come across our borders. And I'm sure some of them are very good people just looking to make some more money. I've heard those reports, and I believe that. But there's some of these folks that don't have those good intentions. And that's where we got to start thinking about it, especially when I'm concerned about your congregation, your church, and these people being here. So just a real quick note about ISIS-K. I'm going to do this real quick, and then we're going to get to what this means to you if you're concerned about your church, temple, or synagogue. They are a regional branch of ISIS from the Khorasan region, and it's really the north part of Pakistan is where they're from. They seek to destabilize and replace governments. That's what they're after. And they really want to replace it with, you've heard that word, caliphate. And that is basically their ideal situation would be to replace government with a 7th century Arabia style government. And other important notes about ISIS-K, just to get to know them a little bit, because I want us to be thinking about the practical part of this. So that's where I'm headed, the practical part. Until April of 2022, they pretty much just attacked eastern Afghanistan and Pakistan. April, May of 2022, they launched rockets into neighboring countries. So they began to expand their borders. In January of 2024, suicide bombings of a mourning procession in Iran. There was mourning going on. It's a procession through the streets mourning someone's death. In March of 2024, they were tied to, and I think admitted to, attacking the concert hall in Russia, which I believe killed 140 plus people. They used rifles and incendiary devices in that attack. Keep that in mind. That's what's important. If this stuff's coming to our country and could come to our churches, then how would they attack? That's what we want to be paying attention to, and that's what I want to call to your attention today. Historical attacks, guns and bombs, and they'll attack anything. They don't mind killing men, women, and children, and it is as far as their history goes. And so January 2018, they attacked the Save the Children office. And these things, again, are primarily going on in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. Suicide bombing of a wedding and a wedding hall, maternity ward and funeral attacked with bombs and guns. 3 gunmen stormed the Kabul University. It was a book fair, and there was a bunch of the politicians that were showing up to that situation in 2020. Suicide bomber in the Hamid Karzai airport. I think that's there's a spelling error there. And that killed a lot of people, 170 people, August of 2021. Now, Human Rights Watch reported that between August of 2021 and September of 2022, ISIS-K attacked religious minorities at mosques, workplaces, and schools. Religious minorities. So, and they're very much focused on opposition, religious opposition, those kind of things. And so that puts many of us Christians, Jews, in the opposite of these folks, in the opposite position of them, or opposite beliefs. In general, we're talking in simple terms here. But we don't want to forget, as we get to the what we're going to do, or what I would recommend, you don't want to forget there's sympathizers here. And there's a lot of sympathizers here. We can see that when the protests come on, we can begin to see who comes out to protest that. But here's a sympathizer that you might remember in April of 2024, Alexander Mercurio. He lives in northern Idaho, or did, and he pledged allegiance to ISIS. He's posed there. You see a picture there. He's posed with a ISIS flag, and he planned local church attacks. In fact, they stopped him just before, I believe they arrested him on Friday or Saturday, and he was planning attacks for that Sunday morning. So what does all this mean for our churches? That's what we want to get to, and that's what we want to talk about. What does it mean? What should we do? Remember, there's 380,000 registered churches in the U.S., 7,000 plus in Canada, and there's thousands all over the world, wherever you're watching from. And so what do we have to expect, and what should we do? And we should really begin to discuss explosive devices and begin to put some of this, we've kind of written that off in the past and said, IEDs and vehicle-borne IEDs and suicide bombers, that's the kind of stuff that goes on other places. But the reality is it goes on here now. It's a possibility of it going on here. And I've shown you videos of cars intentionally driving into churches. We've seen some of that. Go back and look at those videos here on the show and our YouTube page. But the possibilities are coming to a church near you for some of this stuff. And I think we have to train more on situational awareness and begin to expand that to what could a suicide bomber look like, or what could some of these other situations where we've got incendiary devices, what kind of incendiary devices is possible? Is it Molotov cocktails? Is it suicide bombs, explosive devices? We need to dig into that just a little bit more. And we plan to do that here on this show. And, and I think you got to watch people in your community, especially if you're a small community. I know a majority of our churches are smaller and in small communities. And if that is the case, you're watching your community for who's coming in there. Is there a sleeper cell forming in your community? And you got to watch for those kind of things. And I hate to say it because of police actions, but also because of the culture of our country, the idea of profiling people has become a really bad thing. But I'm here to tell you, and I don't know another way to put it, that we got to kind of profile these folks. We've got to look and see to find sleeper cells. You're going to have to look for these folks that are coming into our country. Are they starting to hang out? Are they young military age males? All of a sudden, 2 or 3 of them are showing up at your church and hanging out and asking questions, that kind of stuff. Now, the one thing I want to mention is, as you're hanging out, paying attention to these folks, get to know them. And if they're not some sort of terrorist or they're not planning some kind of evil against your church, then you're simply visiting with them and loving on them. But otherwise, you're getting to know them. So there's a benefit. That's what I love about security is, security is a cool thing because we're both protecting our people, but we can also be an enhancement to the ministry because we find people that might be new to the church, might be visitors. In this case, they could be some young men coming to case our church out or case our community. So we're going to visit with them more, trying to find out more about them. But at the same time, we're being friendly about it, going about it in that fashion and balanced with it. And the possibility is if they're not terrorists or not up to no good, then, hey, we're creating a loving atmosphere, a friendly atmosphere to these folks as they come into our church. That is what's so cool about the security ministry, if you're paying attention to that and if you're trying to do that. So get to know these folks. You're going to have to profile a little bit, especially even in situational awareness here when we're talking about looking for possible problems. You kind of have to profile a little bit and look at these folks and try to make some decisions. And we're going to talk about that more in the future. And then don't forget about covering the basics, minimum entrances. If you can get your entrances for your church down to 1 entrance, so you can put 1 person at the door to watch the lobby and the entrance and maybe even be able to see the parking lot a bit, that's great. And then we want to be out in the parking lot looking for these folks as well. So, it's a tough time we're in. A lot of new folks coming to our country, and I'm certain many of them, most of them, are here for a better life for them and their families. But you and I have got to pay attention to who else is here. And we have facts now that say there's some folks that were here, that are here, that have been arrested. But how many more hundreds and thousands of those folks from different countries that are young military-age men that are here and are up to no good in seeking to maybe cause harm to certain folks within our communities, that kind of stuff, and what are those targets typically? We don't want to forget that, it can be government. ISIS-K is a big proponent of disrupting and causing issues for government. So it can certainly be government buildings, major gatherings of people, faith-based institutions, universities, education systems, all of those kind of things. And events, big events, those can all be targets of those. And sometimes our churches and our people may be involved in several of those, like events and big gatherings, or your church could be larger and could end up being in a city where could be a target for something. So we just want to get prepared. We want to start to shift our focus. I think, my opinion, at least that's what I'm doing, is I'm beginning to shift my focus a little bit more to open it up to some of those things that I maybe did not look at before, like how does a suicide bomber operate and what do they need and how do they have to walk and how do they look as they're coming to a place where they're going to be a bomber. And we're going to talk about situational awareness coming up in one of our very soon shows here just around the corner. So thanks for joining us. Hey, watch this video